In the dense woodlands of Pennsylvania, where ancient trees cast shadows that seemed to move independently of their branches, a case emerged that would challenge every principle of forensic investigation. What began as a routine missing person report transformed into something far more disturbing, leaving investigators with evidence that defied both logic and natural law. Before diving deeper, don't forget to subscribe for weekly mysterious content. It was October 12, 1999, in the small borough of Milheim, Pennsylvania, population barely 800 souls. The autumn air carried the scent of decomposing leaves and approaching winter, while fog drifted between the towering oaks and maples that surrounded this quiet community, nestled in Center County's rolling hills. Millicent Shidler, known to everyone as Millie, had lived her entire 73 years in the same modest house on Penn Street. The elderly woman maintained a strict routine that neighbors could set their clocks by. Every morning, she would tend to her garden before walking the 3 blocks to Miller's General Store for her daily newspaper and conversation with the shopkeeper. On that October morning, Millie failed to appear at her usual time. Margaret Yoder, the woman who lived next door, noticed immediately. The elderly neighbor had watched Millie's daily ritual for over 2 decades, and its absence felt as jarring as a clock suddenly stopping. By afternoon, Margaret's concern had grown into genuine alarm. She approached Millie's house and found the front door unlocked, which was unusual for the cautious woman. Inside, everything appeared normal. Millie's bed had been slept in, her coffee cup sat half empty on the kitchen table, and her reading glasses lay folded beside yesterday's newspaper. The only anomaly was in the back garden. Millie's prized rose bushes, which she had cultivated for 30 years, showed signs of recent disturbance. The soil around several plants appeared freshly turned, though no gardening tools were visible. More peculiar still, the roses themselves had begun to wither, despite having been in perfect bloom just days before. Margaret contacted the Pennsylvania State Police that evening. Trooper Daniel Kowalski arrived to take the initial report, expecting a straightforward case of an elderly woman who had perhaps wandered off or suffered a medical emergency. What he discovered would haunt him for years to come. The search began at dawn on October 13th. Volunteers from the community joined state police and local emergency services in combing the surrounding farm. The woods behind Millie's property stretched for miles, connecting to the vast Pennsylvania wilderness that had swallowed countless souls over the centuries. Within hours, the searchers made their first disturbing discovery. Approximately half a mile from Millie's house, they found her house slippers placed neatly side by side on a fallen log. The slippers showed no signs of wear or damage, as if they had been carefully removed and positioned with deliberate precision. The search team followed a faint trail that seemed to lead deeper into the woods. Along this path, they discovered more of Millie's belongings at regular intervals. Her cardigan hung from a low branch, perfectly clean and undamaged. Her wedding ring sat atop a moss-covered stone, gleaming as if recently polished. Each item appeared to have been placed with the same methodical care as the slippers. Detective Sarah Chin, who had been assigned to coordinate the investigation, noted the bizarre nature of these discoveries. The placement of the items defied any logical explanation. If Millie had been fleeing in panic or confusion, her belongings would have been scattered randomly. If she had been attacked, there would have been signs of struggle or damage to her possessions. The trail of belongings led to a small clearing roughly 2 miles from Millie's home. Here, the search team made their most unsettling discovery. Millie's nightgown lay spread across the forest floor, arranged as if she had simply vanished from within it. The fabric showed no tears, no stains, no indication of violence or struggle. Surrounding the nightgown, the search team observed something that would perplex botanists and soil experts for months to come. The forest floor in a perfect circle around the garment had been stripped of all vegetation. Not burned, not uprooted, but simply absent, as if the plants had never existed at all. The exposed earth beneath was hard-packed and smooth, resembling polished stone more than natural soil. Dr. Elizabeth Hartman, a forensic botanist from Penn State University, examined the site 3 days later. Her analysis revealed traces of an unknown compound in the soil, something that registered on spectrographic analysis but matched no known chemical signature. The compound appeared to be organic in nature, yet contained molecular structures that seemed to violate established principles of biochemistry. As the investigation continued, more disturbing details emerged. Several residents of Milheim reported experiencing vivid dreams in the weeks following Millie's disappearance. These dreams shared remarkable similarities, despite the dreamers having no contact with each other about their nocturnal experience. The dreams invariably featured Millie standing in her garden at twilight, though she appeared somehow different. Witnesses described her as taller, more angular, with eyes that reflected light like those of a nocturnal animal. In these dreams, she would beckon to the observer, speaking in a voice that sounded like wind through dry leaves. Thomas Brennan, a local historian who had lived in Milheim for over 50 years, revealed information that cast the case in an even more sinister light. According to records he had uncovered in the borough's archives, similar disappearances had occurred in the area throughout the past century. Every 20 to 30 years, an elderly resident would vanish under circumstances that defied explanation. The pattern was remarkably consistent. The missing person would always be found to have left a trail of personal belongings leading into the forest. Each disappearance occurred during the autumn months, and in every case, the investigation would be quietly closed after several weeks with no resolution. Brennan's research revealed that the indigenous peoples who had originally inhabited the region possessed legends about the forest that surrounded Milheim. These stories spoke of ancient entities that dwelt beneath the earth, beings that required periodic tribute to maintain their slumber. The legends describe these entities as capable of calling to specific individuals. Drawing them into the woods through means that transcended normal human understanding. Detective Chen initially dismissed these historical accounts as folklore, but the consistency of the pattern troubled her. She requested access to the archived case files from previous disappearances, but discovered that most of the documentation had been destroyed or lost over the decades. The few surviving reports contained details that mirrored Millie's case with unsettling precision. The investigation took another disturbing turn when soil samples from Millie's garden revealed the same unknown compound that had been found at the forest clearing. Analysis showed that the concentration was highest around the rose bushes that had withered so mysteriously. The compound appeared to be spreading through the soil in a pattern that suggested intentional distribution rather than random contamination. Dr. Hartman's continued analysis revealed that the compound was somehow alive, exhibiting properties that blurred the line between organic and inorganic matter. Under microscopic examination, it appeared to pulse with a rhythm that resembled a heartbeat, though no cellular structure was visible. When exposed to various stimuli, the compound would react in ways that suggested a primitive form of consciousness. 3 weeks after Millie's disappearance, Margaret Yoder reported a final chilling development. She had been awakened in the early morning hours by the sound of someone moving about in Millie's garden. Looking out her window, she observed a figure tending to the withered rose bushes. The figure appeared to be wearing Millie's familiar gardening dress, but something about its proportions seemed fundamentally wrong. The figure moved with mechanical precision, its limbs bending at angles that human joints could not achieve. When it turned toward Margaret's house, she saw that while the face bore Millie's features, the eyes were completely black, reflecting the moonlight like polished obsidian. The figure raised one hand in what might have been a wave, then simply faded from view, leaving no trace of its presence. By morning, Margaret discovered that the rose bushes had returned to full bloom, more vibrant and healthy than they had ever appeared before. The soil around them now contained such a high concentration of the unknown compound that it glowed faintly in the darkness, casting an eerie phosphorescence across the garden. The Pennsylvania State Police officially closed the Millicent Shidler case on December 1, 1999, classifying it as a missing person investigation with no viable leads. The final report made no mention of the unusual evidence discovered during the search, nor did it reference the historical pattern of similar disappearances in the area. Detective Chen submitted a supplementary report detailing the anomalous findings, but this document was immediately classified and sealed. She was transferred to a different district within the week, and subsequent attempts to access the case files were met with claims that the documentation had been lost or destroyed. The compound found in the soil samples was confiscated by federal authorities who claimed jurisdiction under environmental protection statutes. Dr. Hartman's research was terminated, and she was instructed to destroy all samples and data related to the case. The clearing where Millie's nightgown had been found was quietly cordoned off and designated as a protected ecological zone, preventing public access. In the years following the investigation, several residents of Milheim reported continued sightings of the figure in Millie's garden. These encounters always occurred during the pre-dawn hours, and witnesses described the same impossible proportions and obsidian eyes that Margaret had observed. The figure would tend to the roses, which continued to bloom with supernatural vigor before dissolving into the morning mist. The house on Penn Street remained empty, with no effort made to settle Millie's estate or dispose of her property. Local real estate agents reported that potential buyers would experience overwhelming feelings of dread when approaching the residence, often fleeing before completing their inspection. The few who persisted in examining the property would invariably change their minds after spending time in the back garden. Thomas Brennan continued his research into the historical disappearances, but his investigations were curtailed when the borough's archives were destroyed in a suspicious fire. The blaze consumed only the section containing records related to the missing persons cases, leaving the rest of the collection untouched. Brennan himself vanished 3 months later, his disappearance following the same pattern as the others. The case file for Millicent Shidler remains sealed, its contents known only to a select few within federal agencies whose existence is rarely acknowledged. The official position maintains that she simply wandered into the forest and succumbed to the elements, her body never recovered due to the vast wilderness area. What do you think really happened to Millie Shidler in those Pennsylvania woods, and how do you explain the impossible evidence left behind? Subscribe to explore more cases where the official explanations raise more questions than they answer.